Hi everybody, this is Patrick from Sasquatch in the Wild. This is Bigfooting 101, and this little series that I'm going to put into play right now is for people who are getting into Bigfooting or Sasquatching, or even people who have been doing this for quite a while. And you come across people that you're not really sure about yet, that you kind of want to be their mentor. Maybe they want you to study underneath them. And I'm going to kind of fill you in on some things, and maybe through the stories that I talk about, you'll find these issues that I went through, and hopefully you won't find them in the people that you're going bigfooting with. Hopefully the people you go with are perfectly normal. You'll find a lot of people don't like other researchers, or researchers don't like other researchers. You find that across the board throughout the United States and into Canada. And I'm going to try to help you wiggle your way through this one step at a time. And this is the way I'm perceiving it, is through my stories. I'm going to refer to a couple videos during this, and I will put the link or links at the very end of this video, but I will, I'll talk about it a little bit as we get into this. So the person that I met when I first got into SUR, the person's name is Robin, and she kind of comes off as the mother hen. She's like looking out for people for whatever reason, like that's her obligated thing to do. And she comes off as one way, but you soon will find out what she's really kind of like. So Mike invited me out and her to camp out at one of his favorite locations, and I said, sure, I'd like to do it. So I packed up my car. He drove his truck. I want to say she drove also, but I don't remember her car. So maybe she rode with Mike. And we all went out to his favorite spot. So we get there about midday, and we set up Mike's tent. And his tent's a big outfitter's tent. It's something like 10 to 15 feet long by 10 foot wide. So I'm going to go with probably 12 to 15 feet long and 10 foot wide. You could fit 3 cots, like one cot here, one cot in the middle, one cot on the opposite end, and just fine without any problems. So when we got Mike's tent built, Mike right away goes in and he goes to the far left. Now, prior to us having this event, Mike and I were at a different event, and this is one of the videos I'm going to talk about, is Junior. And the Junior event had to do with me being on the far right. Now, as I'm coming into that tent, Robin's already got her tent to the far right of that tent, so I'm going right down the middle. And I looked at her, and she goes, Patrick, I got the hot spot. I got the hot spot. Ha, ha, ha. I got the hot spot, and I was like, good. And she kind of looked at me and was like, I said, because I know what happens in that spot. And I looked over at Mike. He's smiling, and she looks over at Mike, and he's got this weird smirk. And she's like, what's going on? And I was like, don't worry about it. You got the hot spot. You remember that. And so I was like, you weren't there for Junior. I was. You enjoy. If it happens to you, great. You'll have that experience. And so I put my cot right in the middle, and she goes, well, maybe you want to trade. And I was like, no, you enjoy that spot. I deserve a break. Mike thought that was really kind of funny. If you don't know what it is, you need to watch the video I'm going to post and all the videos that kind of follow that. And prior to that, actually. So I went ahead and got my stuff situated, and she put her chair in between her cot and my cot. And then I had my stuff at the far end of my cot, and Mike put his chair in between, or like there was a space in between my cot and his cot. So I was like, okay, not a big deal. We go out and we start prepping for dinner. Well, Mike brings out fillets, and he goes, I hope you guys are hungry because I brought fillets. And I was thinking he brought 3 fillets. No, he brought out enough fillets to fill a complete plate, a second level, and another fillet for the top. So there was probably about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, about nine or 10 fillets. I had a fillet and maybe a half. He had 2 fillets, and she had, I want to say, 1 fillet. But still, there was enough to create a small pyramid of meat on that plate. It was pretty insane. So he also made 3 potatoes, which I couldn't get all the way through. I think I had a half a potato. She probably had half a potato. And then there was some whole onions. I want to say there was possibly some roasted garlic in that as well. I can't remember about the garlic, but I know about the onion and potatoes. So while this stuff was slowly cooking, he said, in the sky, everything's getting dark. And he had mentioned that there at some point there was supposed to be a full moon. But when we first started this, it was pitch black. The moon hadn't come up yet. You could see the horizon that there was a glow, but it wasn't exposed at all to where we could physically see it. But it was still pitch black where we were, around our campsite. So Mike said we should explore a little bit in the dark, and we typically will do that. We'll wander around in the dark, That's where you run into bears and things that you don't really want to walk into. But for some reason, when you're Bigfooting, you don't really run into wildlife like that. I have never encountered a bear at night. Now, I have in my tent. I've had them come up to it, but that's a totally different subject. But he and Robin went off to the right. So if you went out of the tent and you went to the right and you went about 60, 70 yards, you'd run into a drop off, and that drop off has a long slope, and you go into this big open valley. And across the way, which is about 200 yards out, there's another cliff, and you can see up on the other side. And it's like this crazy valley that stretches the length of, probably a couple miles either direction. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I had to go up to my car because I was building my teepee. And as I was building it, I was going in and out, and Robin looks at me and goes, are you not sleeping in our tent? I said, no, this is a bait tent. I want to try to bait something in. So she goes, oh, okay. And so I set up my 4-track. My 4-track was going on and off, and I didn't realize at the time that this is what they do when they're recording. It records sound, and then it plays for about 10 seconds to maybe a few minutes, depending on what it catches for audio. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was just turning on and off random willy-nilly, and it was driving me stir crazy. But I was still learning the product at the time. So I was going back and forth, and Mike and her went to the side, and I went out to my car. Now it's pitch black at the time, and I wasn't wearing a headlamp, and I was letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. And as I was walking towards my car, the only way I knew it was that, and I had to click it. And I'd see flash. I was like, okay, there's my car. So I'd walk towards it, and I started to hear something walking down the entrance to where we came in. I thought it was a person coming down. And I kept saying, hello, hello, is someone there, hello? And I could see the fence line in the distance. I could see part of the field in the distance. I couldn't see from about this point on. It was blocked out. I could see something was kind of moving, but it was tall, so I figured it was a person. And it was kind of a cool night, and so I figured they were wearing a coat. And this individual came walking up, and I knew there was something there because I could feel the presence of someone or something. And I said, hello. And I was like, how come I can't see you? And so I started to lift my head up, and I realized I'm not looking straight up like in my very first video talking about Big Man. I was looking like this. So I'm looking at a almost normal angle looking up. I figured the individual I was looking at was about somewhere between an 8 and 9 foot tall individual. And when I looked up at him, he was looking down, and he had glowing eyes, and I could see this much of his face. A little bit of his nose was pushed in, kind of flared, glowing eyes. His eyes were offset. And I was like, oh. At that moment, I said, "Are you hungry?" I went, "Food, food, yum, 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 yum." And I did this. And he just stared at me. Just stared. He gave this really weird looking stare. He was just staring at me. So I was like, okay. And he turns and he walks back out. Now, at the same time, Mike and Robin are having these experiences of they're seeing this red or this bluish orb thing moving around down in the valley, and it started to come up. Now, there's a road somewhere back there that comes up to roughly this campsite that I didn't know about. And he said, "Yeah, you know, Patrick, come over. You gotta come over. You gotta look at this blue orb." And I said, "I will in a minute. Hold on." And so I closed it. I go back to my car, close the hatch, lock it, come walking back, and at that moment, we're coming in at the same time. And Mike's like, "Okay, I think the meat's almost getting there." And he said he sits down at the entrance of the tent. Robin sits next to him, and she said, "You should have seen it. It was this blue glow. It was really cool." And I said, "Yeah, I came across somebody as I was walking back out to my car." And he goes, "We had somebody coming walking in." And I said, "Yeah, I could hear them walking in." And he was like, "Who was it?" And I said, "Well, I could not actually give a description." And he goes, "Why?" And at that moment, Robin leans over and goes, "This is where he's going to say he's a Bigfoot." And he was like, and I heard all of that. I heard every single last bit of it. And this is for Robin. I heard you, Robin. I have better hearing than you'll ever have. in 1,000 lifetimes, I will still have better hearing than you'll ever have. So that kind of that missed me a little bit. You know, here's someone who's supposed to be teaching you about things and stuff, and she's talking down to you. People should never do that to you. So I said, no, there was an individual that I walked out. I could hear them breathing. And eventually I looked up and I saw glowing eyeballs looking back down at me. He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, it's just right out here, right out the front." And he goes, "Well, that's pretty cool." And so he was taking this in stride, but at that moment, I didn't know what the reality check of me being part of Sir really was, because Mike was listening to me, but Robin's kind of. Hey everybody, this is Patrick from Sasquatch in the Wild. So this video will be a 13-minute video, and I will start it back up right where the video stopped, and I have to cut it into 2 more parts. It's just the way it's gonna have to be. So I'm cutting this little excerpt short. Hope you're enjoying this so far. I hope you're enjoying the journey. So I will talk to you all soon. See ya. Bye.